In the next experiment of this, we had three conditions. In this experiment, we had a sheet of paper, and we asked people to find pairs of similar letters on a sheet of paper. And we paid them more for the first sheet and the second sheet and the third sheet and so on. And then we had the acknowledge condition. In the acknowledge condition, the participant handed in, they wrote their name on the sheet, they handed it in, the experimenter looked at it, said, uh-huh, and then put it on a big pile of papers. In the ignored condition, the experiment took it without looking at it and just placed it on a large stack of papers. And in the shredder condition, the experimenter took it and immediately just put it through a shredder. Now we already know from the Legos experiment that the acknowledge condition would probably get much more action than the shredder condition. Right? People would probably work much more, even though in the shredder condition, by the way, people could have cheated and just get more action, to pretend they responded more. But what about the ignored condition? Would the ignore condition be more like the acknowledge when we didn't really destroy anything? Or is the lack of recognition sufficient to create most of the damaging effect? And the results basically show us that the ignored was like the shredder. In fact, the moment we don't give people a good word about their job, they are as demotivated as when we shred their work in front of their eyes.
Wow.
Now, let me say something about Karl Marx and Adam Smith. So Adam Smith has this very famous story about the pin factory. And Adam Smith said, if you think about pin factories, making pins takes about 15 steps. And in the old days, if you gave somebody all 15 steps to do, they could make maybe 24 pins a day. That's really inefficient. But if you think about kind of dividing labor and the efficiency that comes with it, and you divide these steps into 15 steps, and each person does one step, now you get efficiency. Now you get people working much more effectively, much faster, and in fact, 15 people in a day can make 8,000. I don't remember the exact number, but thousands and thousands of pins. Much improvement of labor just due to this efficiency increasing aspect called division of labor. That was Adam Smith. Karl Marx, on the other hand, said, it's all about alienation of labor. And if you get people to not understand what they're doing, to not care and so on, you're basically taking away the most important part of their motivation. And I think that in the pre-industrial revolution age, or kind of in the time when Adam Smith was writing about pin factories, he was right. And the efficiency of labor was actually more important than the alienation of labor. However, when we move to the knowledge economy and we think about today, this is reversed. And I think today the efficiency is actually less important for knowledge workers, and meaning of labor is much more important. That in fact, we might want to spend much more time getting people to understand what they're doing. That taking some kind of form filing on SAP and dividing into 15 things and giving each person to fill one number might create an incredible efficiency in Adam Smith world, but we would lose a lot, because at the same time we would get people to be disenchanted with the work, not feel why they're doing it, and as a consequence not care as much. Okay. Let me kind of summarize. And labor is clearly complex. It's one of those topics which is centrally important. We understand very little of it at the same time. People work for very different and multiple motives and incentives, and the task of figuring out how those works is really, really crucial. I think companies that do this well could achieve much better success, not to mention harmony and better work environment. So we talked about this model of labor where we have to pay people, and I think this is you could think that this is a good description of a simple labor market model, but as we said, it's not even true for rats. So if it's not true for rats, maybe the natural motivation to rest is not the right idea, and that what we need, and that payment is the only driver to motivation is probably not the right idea, and the labor is only driven to rest is probably not the right idea. Instead, what we probably want to think about is there are many different motivations to labor. We have social motivation, and I don't know about you, but every time I fly and somebody next to me decides to talk to me, they often tell me about what they do for work. They rarely tell me about, their political opinion, how many kids they have, what's their sexual fantasies. The meaning of work and the connection we have to our workplace is so substantial and central that it's incumbent on us to try and A, provide more of it, and B, try to utilize it. So we talked about social motivation. It's about other people, social norms. We talked a lot about meaning. I didn't have time to talk about what happened when we pay people lots of money. It turns out work becomes a bit more difficult and complex under those situations. And as a final comment, I want to say one last thing, which is depicted by this cartoon. So it says, our relationship entered its decline at this point. And then the other says, that's when you started graphing everything. He's asking, is this coincidence? and the reason I'm bringing this up is because we are talking now a lot about executive compensation on Wall Street, and one of the proposals has been to pay executives on the 5-year performance of their stock and not the immediate performance. And I think it's a reasonable idea, but I think it's actually not going to do that much. And here is the reason. All these regulations about bankers, I think, are really giving bankers not enough credit. They're treating bankers like rats in a cage, not the rats who work for food, the rats who just do the minimum possible. And they're saying all we need to do is to rearrange the food in a way that will get the bankers to do what we want them to do. And the only thing the bankers are motivated is by their salary, and we just need to make this salary a 5-year salary just in a few months, and we need to do to pay them less and so on. And the whole notion is, it's a simple incentive structure. The bankers only work for money, and if we solve that situation, everything would be fine. But the reality is, I think that we are what we measure to a large degree. And imagine you were a CEO and you got paid, not based on the 5-year performance of your stock, but the 25-year performance of your stock. And frankly, most CEOs have enough money. This is not the only thing that motivates them. So I paid you based on the 25-year performance of your stock. But you know what? That's not the only thing that happens in your life. Every day you got calls from people, and these people wanted to know, why is your stock not higher? Or you got calls from people and said, what are you going to do about the price of the stock? And you talk to, and all of those people wanted you to read the price of the stock, and your friends wanted to know as well, how's your company doing? And the value of your stock is a good indicator for this, and they would call you worried if the stock went down. Is something going wrong? How are you feeling? And they would be happy when the stock, wouldn't you under those circumstances try to get the stock up artificially? Wouldn't you try to get it up just to please all the people who are around you? I think you would. The moment that's what you measure, and the moment it's only what you measure, that's what people will try to optimize. And now the question is, what do we try to measure? I mean, is there a way to change this system such as we measure other things? Job creation, pollution, compliance. I mean, there's lots of stuff that we can measure. But because we have all of these motivations for labor and not only one, the one that we measure end up trumping everything else because they just become so clear and obvious. And those are the ones that we try to work hard.